Have you ever wanted to change everything about your life? You know, quit your job, downsize your house, get rid of all your stuff, pack a bag and just head off over the horizon. What stopped you? Common sense, right? Real people don't actually do that. Hi, I'm Kat. I live, work and travel full-time in my motorhome. In 2018, I quit my job as an air traffic controller and set off to tour the UK and Europe. And I haven't stopped since. Give or take 2020 and the global pandemic, but we don't talk about that. And I love it. I love this lifestyle and living in my motorhome and being able to tour. I've just come back from Iceland, actually. It was magical. But I want to share 10 things that I wish I knew before I moved into a van full time. Now I know not everybody wants to live in a van full time, doesn't want to downsize their house and sell all their stuff, and perhaps they're not even able to. I appreciate that I was in a very privileged position to be able to do that. But if you are thinking about hiring a van for a month or two, a lot of these tips will apply to you. So whether you're thinking about a motorhome, a camper van, an RV, a caravan, anything like that, whether it's a permanent switch or just a longer term holiday, I hope you find this useful. First thing, downsizing is hard and you will absolutely overpack. Like I say, recently I went to Iceland and I actually took a different vehicle with me rather than my usual motorhome. I was loaned one for a few weeks, and having to move my stuff out of this van into the other van, I realised how much I had, and like any building or house that you live in, you sort of expand to fill the space and there are things crammed into all the pockets. But also the hardest thing is when you're coming out of a house, whether that, it's a big house or a small house, it is going to be bigger than your motorhome or your RV is that you're moving into. And trying to downsize all of those things, you have to change your brain. So I've got a couple of tips to share with you. Firstly, most important to understand is that if you have a vehicle that is over the maximum allowed weight for that vehicle, it can be dangerous, but also your insurance can be invalidated. So please make sure that you stay within the legal limits of your vehicle so that you don't have any issues if you do have an incident. So in order to downsize when you're living in a house or a boat like I was, I moved from a boat into a van, go through every room. Now some people say you should take all the different types of stuff, like all your clothes into one room, all of your books and paperwork into another room. And there is a way of doing that, but I found that quite difficult because I spread out and there was stuff all over the boat in all the different rooms. So the way I did it was I shut off each room as its own complete thing, and whatever was in there was in there. And then I moved everything in that room into 4 piles. Now the first pile was keep and take it with me, so stuff that I really wanted to bring with me into my new life. The second pile was keep and store it. So these were more sentimental stuff, so like baby pictures or things from my daughter when she was little, or all that sort of sentimental stuff that I didn't need to take with me and have carrying around. I took a couple of bits obviously, but most of it I just didn't want to get rid of. So I boxed them up, put them in a family member's attic. They were most overjoyed, but those were the things that I really wanted to keep that were personal and precious to me. Third pile is stuff to sell. Now you're going to need as much money, and we will talk about budget very shortly, but you're going to want as much money as you possibly can. So don't just give everything away, although if you're feeling generous and you're able to do, then please do so. But you can actually sell your old stuff to make some more money. One person's loss is another person's gain, as they say. So hopefully you will find there's lots of stuff that you no longer need or want coming into your new lifestyle that you will then be able to sell to other people. And then the fourth pile are things to donate or to throw away if there's just absolutely no way that somebody else could get any useful use out of them. So that's how I did it. I went through each room and I literally split them into 4 piles. And then, this is also very important, if you're going to donate or throw anything, get rid of it. Get rid of it, donated it, get rid of it, throwing it. If you don't need it right there and then before you start your new life, just remove it out of your life. And similarly, if you want to store stuff, get a couple of boxes and start boxing them up so they are out of your way. Even if you are not planning to move into a van for a couple of years yet and you're looking at this sort of as a long-term project, which is perfect. You're going to be so organised by the time you come around to it, far more than I was. But if you are doing that, you're like, right, I want to keep them somewhere safe, then you'd think about where you're going to store them first of all and how much money that's going to cost, but also start boxing them up so that then you've got all nice sort of neat things, and then you can start getting rid of stuff as you go, and it'll be so much less overwhelming. The next thing that I wish I'd really sort of comprehended, because I hadn't spent a whole lot of time in a van before I started living in one, is that you don't use a van like you do a house. And the space, like I am now here in my living room, it's also my gym, it's also my office, it's also whatever else, my nap room. It's a very good nap room. This little corner sofa that I've got going on here is brilliant for an afternoon nap. But this space has to do so many things. It's also, what you can't see behind the camera is the dumping ground when I've moved stuff off this seat and pushed it over on that seat. But yeah, your space has so many different uses, and you will need to be quite versatile in how you use them. And when you are coming to buy a vehicle or hire a vehicle, have a look at the space. Like for me, I'm quite long, I'm 5'11", so things like, can you do Pilates or yoga in this space? I like to do that. Not as often as I should, but I do try to stay fit whilst I'm travelling, and being able to do that in the space was something important to me. So having a gap that I was long enough was really good. And if you share the space with somebody else, they will obviously have their own hobbies, and it's something to think about how you're going to do that. And having less stuff really helps when you're trying to keep things tidy and move from sort of an office to a nap room to a gym to a whatever. If you have less stuff to put away, you'll find it so much easier. Budget. Budget is, frankly, it's everything. It is the biggest thing that I did that I think helped me get out on the road and be able to quit my job and save so much money and able to quit my job and go traveling as quickly as I can, was getting on top of my budget. Now, I know that every single person watching this will have a different budget, a different amount of income coming in each month, a different amount of savings, a different amount of debt, and it's all going to be different for everyone. But there are some things that you absolutely can do right now to start working towards your goal. Whether it takes you a year or whether it takes you 10 years to get there, that will depend on your income and your debts and all those other things. But if you want a step-by-step process on what I did and the kinds of things that you should be saving for, I've put together a freebie for you, the Practical Van Life Finance of Freedom mini guide, and that will walk you through the things that you need to do and you need to know before you set out on the road. So I hope you find that useful, and I'll drop the link in the notes for you. But a couple of things just to talk about when we're talking about budget. First of all, you need to reduce your debts. The more debts you have, the more you're paying in interest, the more you're stressing about them, all of this stuff. So first thing to work on is paying those off. Keep your credit cards if you've got a credit card, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Don't just cut them up or anything like that, but work to pay them off so that the balance is back down to zero. Mortgages are slightly different, and mortgage will of course depend on whether you're going to keep your house or flat or whatever it is. If they're going to keep that and rent it out, in which case you need to do sums like, well, is the rental income I'm likely to get minus sort of 10-15% to pay for upkeep on that property and insurance and everything else that you need? Is the rental income going to pay for the mortgage, or am I going to need to pay some top up? Because if that's the case, you need to look at whether renting it out is the best option for you. But all the other debts you should try very hard to pay off before you downsize your life, and certainly before you quit your job. Next thing to think about is start doing a list of the bills that will continue. So these might be things like health insurance, like if your gym membership. Now I still keep my gym membership, and it's brilliant. Even though I've got a shower and toilet and everything in my vehicle, if I want to go to the gym, I have a gym membership with one that's all around the UK, and it means I can go there, I can have a swim, I can use their showers. It's brilliant. So I highly recommend that. Other bills that will continue is obviously vehicle insurance, road tax, all of these other things that you will have to keep paying. The next thing is look at your lifestyle now. What bills will disappear once you change your lifestyle? So things like if you pay a parking permit for where you work, if you pay for an extra car, you get rid of that obviously once you start living in a van full time. All these other bills that will disappear, and although you have to keep paying them until your lifestyle changes, that's something that you can think about. Hi puppy, hi, you're gonna be part of this, are you? All right then. So once your debts are gone, and once you know what bills will continue and the ones that you can get rid of, you can start getting an idea on how much you're going to need to bring in as a monthly income for you to continue to live. The other thing I really recommend that you do right now is start tracking how much money you spend on things like food, on fuel, on clothing, on entertainment, on fun. If you find that you have things like 6 different subscriptions for TV apps like Netflix and Disney Plus and Amazon Prime and all of the other ones that we all have, that's a lot of money every month and every year if you pay it annually. So those are things that you start looking at like, will I still continue them? Now, I still have Netflix and Disney Plus and Amazon Prime and now TV. But I like them for various channels and programs, and I've added them into my budget. You don't have to downsize and live frugally and live without all the things that you love to have and to do. You just have to make sure that you've budgeted for them before you set off so that you don't get yourself into trouble. And the way that I did all that was I started tracking it months in advance, started cutting down as quickly as I could things like that little Costa coffee in mid-afternoon as a little pick-me-up. I got rid of that as much as I possibly could, and I got rid of all of those things. Think about that. That's £3 a day. If you do that 20 days out of the month, that's 60 quid a month you're spending on coffees. And again, if you do that for 10 months, that's £600 in your fund. These are the little things that I did that really made a difference. And I used that money to pay into my emergency fund. Now, I had 2 funds. Well, I still do have 2 funds, to be fair. One is a freedom fund. Now, my freedom fund is part fun. So to do things like I say, I've just gone to Iceland and I was able to do things like snorkeling between 2 tectonic plates and visiting an ice cave and glacier lagoon rides and whale watching, which was amazing. All of these things came out of my freedom fund because I save money into that as and when I can. I try and do it every single month. And that allows me to go and do amazing adventures and do things when I'm in new places when I can. The other purpose of the Freedom Fund, and you can make this a totally separate account if you want to, is if I decided to stop travelling in my van, if I wanted to, rent a house, I've got a little bit of money put aside so that I could start the next chapter of my life in whatever format that may be, whenever it may happen. Because I'm sure at some point I will want to stop travelling and put down roots somewhere. Maybe, who knows, 5 years on, I'm still really enjoying this. But I've got that as a little sort of addendum to my freedom fund for the next stage, whatever that might be. Now, the emergency fund, I cannot stress to you enough how important an emergency fund is. There have been a couple of times, one very memorable one, when I was in Europe with my dog in the motorhome, and my husband, who was travelling with us at the time, I now travel alone, but he was with me at the time. He was back in the UK for a client meeting. And he got rushed into hospital. So I was stuck in Europe with the dog and the van. And if it hadn't been for the emergency fund, I wouldn't have been able to do what I did, which was put the dog in with a dog sitter, put the van into storage and fly back and just get a next day flight. Those are the kind of things that the emergency fund is really useful. I know people who have needed some work done on their vehicle, and don't forget, this is your home. So if your vehicle goes into the garage for a week or 2 weeks, if it needs a big job done, you need to pay for that, but also you need to find somewhere to live. And most insurance policies, some might, but if it hasn't been some sort of accident or incident, if it's just wear and tear, they will not pay for you to get a hotel or rent an Airbnb or something like that. So you definitely need a couple of thousand at least in your emergency fund. Now, I recommend, once you know how much you're going to spend, and I go into this more in the freebie that I've done, but once you know how much you're spending on a monthly basis, you want at least 6 months in your emergency fund. That will give you the peace of mind that if most things happen, you can be covered by that sum of money and you'll be fine and you can deal with everything. And it's such a weight off when things do go wrong, and they always will when you're doing things like traveling, then you can just deal with them because you've got the money there in the pot. So do not go without an emergency fund, even if you've got to work for an extra couple of months. It's totally worth it. Like I say, I go into more of this in the free download you can get, and the link will be in the notes for you. Still on the subject of money, but slightly different. You can still earn money from the road, and you may not need to quit your job. Now, not every job is possible to do from the road. I was an air traffic controller. They tend to like us in the ops room, not up a mountain in Switzerland somewhere. But before you quit your job, and it sounds so idyllic, doesn't it? Just telling your boss to shove off and I'm going to go traveling, whatever. But before you do that, have a think. Are there some things that you can take? So can you make your current job remote? If you enjoy it, there has been a massive shift in the last couple of years on remote working, and there are so many people who are taking jobs that were traditionally office-based and saying, look, I'm going to go away for a couple of weeks a month, or I'm going to go away for a couple of months or whatever, and it gives them the flexibility to carry on doing that job and getting the income, but they don't actually have to be in the office. So that's definitely worth looking at. The next thing is, what skills do you have? Are you organized? Do you enjoy social media? Could you do things like being a virtual assistant or being a social media manager? The kind of skills that you have built up in your job could very well be transferable online. And you can look at places like Upwork, which I personally use. I've hired people from Upwork, and there's like Fiverr, and I think there's Remote Worker as well. There's a couple of sites that you can look at to see the kind of things that other people are offering their skills and getting paid for those skills. Some people I know, they read a lot, they love to read, so they've turned that actually into a skill. They proofread for people, they proofread for me sometimes, and there are so many skills that you've probably already got that you can then transfer into being on the road. Also, what do you enjoy doing? Reading being a prime example, but there are plenty of other things. What are your hobbies? What are your interests? You might be able to turn those into some sort of income for you. Once you've figured out what you can do and figured out how you can make some money whilst you are traveling, my advice is to start working towards that before you pull the plug. So have all that in place, ready to go before you just leave. Don't try and do it afterwards, because it could take longer to set up and actually get income in than you might think it does. Now, a quick note on blogging and having a YouTube channel. I know so many people like, right, I'm going to set up a YouTube channel and I am going to blog about my adventures and share videos about my van life, and I will earn thousands of pounds every single month and it will be wonderful. I have 30,000 followers on YouTube. I've done it for 5 years. Now, don't get me wrong, YouTube isn't my passion. I haven't put all my energy into it, but I could not live on my YouTube income alone. There are plenty of other people I know who have got much higher subscriber counts than me, and they couldn't live on their YouTube income alone either. It's not as easy to do that, and I don't want to dissuade you. By all means, set up a YouTube channel, put videos out about your adventures. If you want to do that, absolutely go for it, but please don't think that you're going to earn thousands of pounds within 6 months of doing that and that will be you sorted, because it's not that easy. If it is and you manage to figure it out, brilliant, good on you, but for most of us it's not that easy. So I just want to put that out there, not to dissuade you, but just to hope that you find some sort of other income as well to keep you going and tick it up, and YouTube could be like a nice little bonus for you if it does take off. Van life will not make you healthier. I had a thing when I first started that I would become a sort of yoga guru who ate carrot sticks for breakfast and meditated for an hour after a 75-mile run every morning. That hasn't happened. I travel in Europe where they have French bread or they have croissant, and although I love walking and hiking with my dog and I'm tried to do running a couple of times a week, I don't eat carrot sticks. And I tried to do yoga, but I wouldn't call myself a guru by any stretch of the imagination. Van life will not change who you are fundamentally as a person. And if you like I do, curling up with a good book and a packet of custard creams, those are biscuits for my American or other people who don't know what a custard cream is. Biscuits, they're delicious. Try them. Come to the UK, they're magic. But if you like just sort of curling up and munching whilst you're reading a good book, that won't change once you live in a van. It really, really won't. So don't expect that. It is, however, a really good sort of stop point. If you do need a bit of a life change, you want to overhaul your diet or whatever, then that's a really good place and a time to do that. But it won't fundamentally just happen by osmosis, sadly. And also, chores still need to be done. You still need to do things like the laundry and cleaning the van. Although the good thing with this is that the vehicle is so much smaller than a house or a boat or whatever you lived on beforehand. So it gets done so much quicker, which is a massive, massive bonus. But it does still need to happen, and it's sometimes quite easy to forget them or put them out because they can be a bit more of a faff. Cleaning, not so much, but laundry, you have to either use campsite facilities, which if you find a campsite with a laundrette on it or a laundry washing machine and a dryer, then brilliant. But sometimes you have to go into a town or a city and find a laundrette there, which can be a bit of a pain. They do take a little bit longer than just chucking it in if you're at home and going and watching TV while it washes. So that's just something to be mindful of. Another thing I suggest you do is every 6 months, do a clear out. Do an absolute thing of what have you not used? Is it safety equipment? If it's not safety equipment and you've not used it for 6 months, unless it's kind of summer clothes, get rid. You don't need it. And you can even put it in storage if you've got some other stuff in storage and see if you need it for another 6 months or so. And if you don't, get rid of it. Now this one was weird, and I don't know whether it's just because I'm British and us talking about money is kind of a weird thing, but people suddenly think, once they find out that you live in a van, they just think your finances are fair game, and they just ask you questions that you would never dream of asking a stranger any other time. So people ask me all the time, like, well, what about your pension? How much money do you have in savings? Or how much money do you spend every month? And the problem is I get it, because I know before I started that was exactly the kind of questions that I had. Just be aware that people are going to ask you what I would call quite intrusive questions, and it can be a bit abrasive at times. I wish I'd been a bit more prepared for that. Now this is a big one, and this is something I was totally so guilty of, was trying to do too much. There is very definitely a switch between going on a van life holiday and living in a van full time, and it took me a while to make that switch. So the first thing I was guilty of was trying to cram too much in, trying to see too much, trying to drive too much in a day, and just not enough downtime, not enough time between driving to cool places and then being able to relax and just have a day off. I felt guilty for having a day off and not going anywhere. I was like, I've been given this incredible opportunity. I'm incredibly privileged, and I feel like I'm wasting it if I just sit around for a day and read, but you can't live like that. You need the downtime, you need the relaxing days so that you can carry on. Otherwise you'll burn out and just jack it all in, and you don't want to do that. The other thing that I really struggled with was being able to go anywhere was almost overwhelming. It sort of led to a bit of paralysis. I was like, well, do I go north, south, east, west? Which way do I go now? And that was really tough. It took me a while to kind of figure out that I could literally go either direction, and then I started to follow the weather, or I started to find out about festivals or events that were going on, and I would use those to decide where I was going to go and how I was going to do it. But you have to find some sort of rhythm to the travel, and it took me a good 6 months, I reckon, to do that. So make sure that you are prepared for this switch. Another big one, and something that really shocked me actually, friends and families may not understand your choices, especially if, like me, I had to physically leave my career. They wouldn't give me a sort of sabbatical. I couldn't go off and try it for a while. They were like, no, if you leave, you leave, you're not coming back. And that was really difficult after 14 years of building up my career to make that choice. And my friends and family all told me I was absolutely nuts. Now, family, fine, they don't have much of a choice, but I was amazed how some of what I would have thought were my closest friends absolutely cut me off at that point, and we haven't spoken since. And it was very strange. It was almost like me choosing to go and do something different with my life in some way affected our friendship, and perhaps they thought it was a slight on the lifestyle that we had because they were still staying at work. I don't know, but it was something that I wasn't prepared for when it happened, was sort of to be a bit of an outcast to some of my so-called best friends. The good thing is you will meet some amazing people whilst you are traveling, and they will more than make up for it. Some of my best friends now are people that I've met traveling, and there's just something about the mindset of people who change their lives, who aren't scared to step outside the box and do something a little bit different, even if it's for a short period of time, that you mean you connect really quickly when you're on the road, and that is fantastic, and one of the best things about changing your life and going traveling. Which brings me to my final point, and I think it sums up quite well. It is a roller coaster. You can start the day in absolute euphoria. This is amazing. You wake up to a beautiful sunset. I take the dog for a walk, and then something breaks or something goes wrong, and it's almost like you're more exposed to the highs and the lows of life because you are a little bit more self-sufficient. You're out there, you're exposed to nature, and I think nature has a much bigger effect, certainly on me. I've got ADHD, and I am really susceptible to the weather. So when it's raining, I feel a bit glum, and when it's sunny, I feel amazing. So that's something I've learned so much about myself as a human, and how we sort of fit into the environment, and that's been really fantastic. And again, I've mentioned the overwhelmed feeling, but things like you meet people, but on the flip side you can be a bit worried about your safety. So it kind of goes like this, and it's one of those things that I think people start it thinking it's going to change everything about them as a person. It's going to change who they are and what they're like, and don't get me wrong, it does, but in probably more subtle ways than I was expecting. I'm a little bit more introspective. I am probably, in a weird way, a little bit more introverted. I'm definitely more comfortable in my own company, which is actually really good and really useful. And I now need my own space in order to recharge my batteries. And that's something that was a bit different to how I was before. But it is one of those things that I think can suit so many different people. And even if you just do it for a short period of time before moving on to something else, I think being brave enough to change your lifestyle, to go and get a vehicle and drive it yourself to new places and experience that feeling of freedom will absolutely fundamentally change you as a person in many, many ways, hopefully all of them for the better. So I hope you found that introduction to full-time van life useful, and the things that I wish I had known. If you want to know more about solo female van life and solo female travel, or touring around the UK and Europe, or touring with a dog who's currently here snoring beside me, then do come and say hi. I am on social media on all the platforms, but the main ones I'm on are Instagram and Facebook. I also put out loads of videos on YouTube, so you can come and see more behind the scenes of what my life is like. And do come and check out the website wandering-bird.com, where you will find lots of checklists and downloads and things to help you plan your own adventures. And don't forget that you can grab the Finance of Freedom mini guide. The link for that will be in the notes, and that will help walk you through how to start planning your budget. I wish you all the best for your adventures. Do let me know how it goes, and hopefully I'll see you on the road. Take care. Bye.